reading. We are going to deviate from our agenda. The mayor has requested to speak with us about the WilmerHale proposal. So we're going to make that our first item this month.
So I know that Council Vice President Lightfoot has sent over a memo that I had sent over to WilmerHale outlining what City Council was looking for as it pertains to the proposal. On Friday, WilmerHale was able to get back to me with a report on what they would do and how they would do it. And we had also received a letter from the chairs of the Race Commission, also in support of us retaining and working with WilmerHale and doing it in an expeditious fashion so that it can work in concert with the Race Commission. And so I wanted to come back to council to see if they had any questions. I know one of the questions that wasn't answered in their proposal would be that they will be reporting to both of us. This was not something that they would be just reporting to administration. It would be a contract, through the law department, most likely, since they are attorneys. But it would be in the law department is a department that reports to both the mayor and council directly. So I think that for me, I would want to move forward or answer any questions that you may have, or try to get this done so that they can get started with the Race Commission. They also talked about working with the PAB. I know the PAB is looking at looking at policies and procedures as well right now. And I think that having a team with the expertise that WilmerHale has would go a long way right now in getting the work done in a short time frame. I know that that was something that also many members of council was looking for. That this not be drawn out over a long period of time, but something that could be moved forward quickly.
I have sticker shock. I'm just, the price just floors me.
Okay. Okay.
When was that sent over? I haven't seen it yet.
I sent it over, I believe, on either Friday or Saturday.
You sent it to us this morning.
It went to the council members almost 2 hours ago, and I sent a text that said it was going out.
Okay.
Of course, the first question I asked in the very beginning with WilmerHale was, how much is it going to cost? So of course, I think that's probably the most shocking piece of it all, even though I do believe that they are probably have the most expertise to do this work. But I just would like to read into the record an email that I sent over to you, Mayor, and I think it was sent to BJ and to the rest of the members of Police Accountability. And it's just a few questions that they have. Some have already been answered. Who will WilmerHale be reporting to? I think you already answered that. Will it be the mayor, city council, or both? Will the PAB be invited to attend these debriefing sessions? Will we have access to the data that they collect? How will we go about receiving that data? If we have questions, who is the contact person? Who will be at the table for these discussions? Will PAB be invited to attend these debriefing sessions? Will they be engaging outside community groups and not just stakeholders? So that's an email that I sent you, Madam Mayor, this morning after we sent the memo to the Race Commission as well as the Police Accountability, and that came from Shawnee Wilson.
I think we'll see from the proposal that they would be working directly with and engaging directly with the PAB and the Race Commission. As I stated before, it would be a report to both of us. The direct people that we were working on this would be the team that was outlined in that memo. That was sent back to us. And so they would be the people that the PAB would work directly with. The last part would be a meeting, if they wanted to get the data and information, the data and everything is public information. The report would be public. It wouldn't be anything that would be hidden from the public. It will be readily available. So that's not an issue as well. I want to make clear that I heard the council president about the cost for phase one, which I think is the most important part of this and getting started. And we don't necessarily have to, based on the information that we receive in phase one, in what the Race Commission, as well as the PAB and others, do, you don't necessarily have to go with phase two or phase three. We could possibly look at somebody else. We could possibly go out for RFP on that portion of it, because I know there was some questions that Councilmember Gruber had about data and analyzing 911 data and things like that. And so that's, I think, the reason why they broke it down the way that they did, because we don't necessarily have to go with them for phase two or phase three, but in phase one, to do it in 4 months, to have the expertise that they have, is something that I think that they're looking at and bringing in a team to basically work directly with these partners that are already engaged, as well as speaking with stakeholders and other folks within the department, having run DOJ investigations and all of that. There are questions and information that they would be able to glean that someone else probably would not be able to in that short time frame. And so that's the reason why I think that phase one is where the price that it is. I can go back to them and try to negotiate a lower amount, but given the time frame, given the amount of people that will have to work on this and in that time frame, I think that that's the reason why that in basically it's a lot less than what they generally charge for something like this.
How much was Baker Tilly?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I can get that to you.
That would be good, because that was a very exhaustive analysis and report, and it's been very, very useful. Mm-hmm. So I just wonder how those two compare.
Yes, I don't know the amount off the top of my head, but Baker Tilly also was over a year-long process.
Yeah, so that's a distinct difference.
Yeah, they had a lot more time to sort of work this out. We're asking them to really move in a short period of time to be in compliance with the executive order, to be, able to work with the Race Commission, to be able to work with the PAB as well. So,
all right.
But I'll get you that number.
Okay. Additional questions, comments?
I have some questions.
Councilmember Patterson.
I also have some questions.
So I have some concerns about the answer related to who do they work for. Quite frankly, the relationship between Corporation Counsel, where they work for council and for the mayor, has left a great deal to be desired. So for me, the question is still fundamentally, who first and foremost would WilmerHale work for? Would they be working for the administration, or would they be working for council?
They would be working for the people, actually. Not necessarily.
Yeah, sorry, love you, baby. That one ain't gonna work.
But for me, I think that it's a joint effort. Council has the relationship with Linda Kingsley. I believe that she's been advising, and I think that can be explicitly stated in the contract. If you want Linda Kingsley to be your person to be the point of contact for council, or if it's council members, if it's the that all meetings must happen with the chair or the committee of public safety. I think that that's not an issue for me. I think that it's really about getting the work done and working to develop a plan and a process and procedure, a review with experts that know this kind of work.
I don't doubt their expertise, but I have to agree with my colleagues. That price is a bit challenging at this point in time. I don't doubt that they're worth every penny of it, and I don't doubt that we're getting a discount, but you know, hard times right now.
Yeah. So that's phase one of the proposal in a 4-month time frame. You know, I think that, you know, you'd be hard pressed to get anybody that can do that in that time frame for that amount.
I'm not saying they're not worth it. I'm saying I know we got it.
Got it.
Councilmember Lupien and then Councilmember Gruber.
Yes. So, you know, I sent a memo over this morning, which you may not have gotten a chance to see, Mayor, outlining some of my concerns. So I appreciate that you're coming to the chair's meeting so that we have a chance to talk about it. One of my thoughts was, you know, that this law firm is offering to do kind of a DOJ style investigation. And I know that, you know, you had made that call to the Department of Justice, and we know that under the current administration, that's not really likely. However, in, you know, just a couple of weeks, we, you know, hopefully we'll have, well, we may have another president that would, under them, the Department of Justice would do this investigation. And so just wondering your thoughts on, you know, one, waiting, you know, until we have that result and knowing whether or not the Department of Justice will investigate. And then two, you know, whether or not we send this out, since we have to do the scope of work anyways, to an RFP process.
So the first part, I think that the DOJ, if there's a change in administration, it won't happen until January 22nd. They would, of course, have to hire new staff. The Civil Rights Division of the DOJ has been completely gutted under the current administration. And so you would have to work up to that. And you'll probably be another 1.5 to 2 years out before an extensive review would even be done or completely done by a DOJ if they accept the, you know, this particular case. And I'm not sure how many cases they may have before them, given what's happening across the country. And so that would be my worry. And then that also would be out of the time frame for the Race Commission, you know, work, and definitely out of the time frame from the executive order that we must comply with. So that's for the first one. For the second question, as it pertains to going out for RFP, it's a long process. So we have we have an issue right now. We have an entity that has the expertise and have done this across the country. And we have the Race Commission as well as the PAB that's looking at this work right now. And so you're talking about going out for RFP, you have to leave it out for a specified period of time. You have to, you know, then evaluate and review. And so it will be probably sometime in November, December that we would be able to get somebody on board. And that would be way out of the scope of, you know, the Race Commission, even though the PAB is going to be long lasting and around for forever, but they're working on this right now. And I think that given the situation that we are in as a city, that it's important that we do this, that we do this now. We start the work. It doesn't mean that, like I said, for phase 2, for phase 3, that we not go out for RFP. You know, I would say that we could do that on that, but because of the information that I definitely received in the memo, it was that these are things that council wanted to look at. These are, you know, wanted to be evaluated sort of right away for us to start working on, and having the expertise that this company has, or this, you know, WilmerHale has, I don't think that we're going to get that anywhere else.
I guess maybe a final question is, and thank you for answering those. Before, you know, the recommendation from the Conference of Mayors came for WilmerHale, was there a plan prior to this law firm of doing the work for the executive order? I guess I'm feeling like if this is our only option, given the time frame, that maybe we should have been thinking about this beforehand.
So I'm not understanding the question, because this isn't a recommendation that came from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. What happened, well, let me be clear. I reached out to the African American Mayors Association to see if there were any law firms that did work on, given the situation that had happened here, any law firms that did this kind of work. And Danielle Conley came up, and that was who I was referred to. I had completely forgot that WilmerHale was also involved in the U.S. Conference of Mayors report on policing that was led by Mayor Lightfoot. And so that was just a coincidence that happened. And then during my review and talking to them, was able to get that information as well. So I think that we have to be very clear about what it is that we are looking for, in the fact of, at the end of the day, you will get what you pay for. I mean, I think that we've done many evaluations and reports. Some of those people that have won out through an RFP process based on dollar amount didn't necessarily provide us what we were looking for as a result. And I think that having an entity that has the knowledge, the expertise, and the information and the know-how, and have done this before, specifically as it pertains to the issues that we're having here in Rochester, is very important.
I understand. I guess for me, having the expertise of doing it before isn't always a selling point, given that we've gone through this cycle so many times of trying to reform the police. So I'll just say that, I still am concerned, but I really do appreciate you answering my questions.
So I want to be clear that we haven't gone through the cycle of reforming the police in this way before. This is the first time that we are getting deeply engaged in policy, procedures, and how we train and what we are looking for from our police department. We have not, I haven't, I don't know if another administration has done it, but this is the first time that this administration is doing this. We have looked at how we respond to calls and trying to build police community relations, and changing how we do that by, by going to a 2-section police model to a 5-section police model, and looking at that. We've looked at community policing and aligning that with President Obama's 21st century policing recommendations. But what we're talking about doing today, is not something that this administration, and I don't think that this city, has done before.
Madam President, point of privilege, I just would like to add, only because I have this information, Councilmember Gruber has heard this information as well. As part of being on the Race Commission, we've heard former Mayor Bill Johnson speak to the fact that he was drafted by, I believe it was Mayor Ryan years ago, to do a deep dive in police reform. And I know it wasn't your administration, Madam Mayor. However, it has been done. There was a report of over 100 reform recommendations, I believe, 80 to 100 reform recommendations that was done, I don't want to say the 80s, 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Mitch, correct.
The Crimmy report, I think it was 1975 or something like that.
And yes, so I will say, of course, it has not been done by this administration. You're absolutely right, Madam Mayor, but it has been done in the past by other administrations. And I will say, to speak to that, the fact, something that we can learn from that is that that was done by internal people and people, local folks. I think there's some value. One of the things that I really like about the WilmerHale idea is I think there is some value about having an outside people looking at our situation as opposed to inside folks, because we've done that already. And all of these reforms, some of them which we have today and which we're utilizing today and which we'll probably want to change today, came out of that previous locally developed reform report that was done by previous administrations. So it has been done, and it was all completely local, when it was done. And what we have now is a result of that. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilmember Gruber?
Yes, and I'm sorry I can't be on video, and I apologize that you'll probably hear a crying baby in short order, but I will do my best, and if not, I'll put it in writing. I guess my concern is when I look at the scope of work, I mean, first of all, I also have sticker shock like President Scott. I think it's a lot of money, and I will say that I think that, you know, a firm like WilmerHale, this may be a good price for that, for what the work they typically do. I'm not sure that they necessarily understand the economics of Rochester, New York versus some of the places that they worked. So I also have sticker shock. But the more important thing, you know, Mayor, if you and Chris and everyone else feel that we have the dollars to be able to do this, I could get around that. My concern is that actually in the scope of work for phase one, I don't see anything that they're offering to do that their expertise actually sets them apart. You know, I was very impressed when we met with them that day about their work in Baltimore after Friday Gray and a lot of other places that they've done some work. But really what they talked about doing is essentially a full inventory of our existing, you know, laws and policies and practices and procedures, which is exactly what RAISE is charged with doing, which is exactly what PAB is charged with doing. And so to spend $250,000 to essentially have them coordinate that, I'm just not sure that they actually we're utilizing their external expertise for phase one versus maybe some of the other phases after that inventorying has been done. And I guess I would just ask, no external, because I agree with Willie, external parties make sense here. No external party has more knowledge about our police department than RIT. Has there been a conversation at all with RIT about being able to do this work for a fraction of the price?
No, there has not been a conversation with RIT, and they'll be doing more than inventorying our what we currently have. I think that it's a matter of not just looking at what we currently have, but making what we need to change, and also working with the Race Commission and the PAB. No, we haven't worked with RIT, but again, I think that people that are engulfed in working directly with our current police department, as the council vice president has indicated, have a certain lens that they're looking at this through. And, you know, sometimes when you're inside the house, you can't see the problems, but when you stand outside, you get a different point of view. And I think that that's very important. I would talk, you know, some of they didn't go into proprietary information on how they would actually outline a lot of that work in phase one or phase two or phase three, because of it, you know, how they do it and what would take place would be proprietary information. I think that they would gladly, you know, talk to you, Councilmember Gruber, if you have any questions about that more specifically. But, you know, in phase one, so you don't have a whole lot of intricate details of how the work will be done. And I think that they clearly say doing a DOJ in phase one, doing a DOJ style deep dive into our police department is, you know, their phase one. And I think that that's different than anybody else that can provide that. I don't know if RIT has ever done a DOJ investigation, but these people have.
Got it. So, and from your perspective, Mayor, like, is this what you were hoping to get back from them? I mean, does the scope and the price align with what your hopes were when you brought them to us?
So I think that phased in, yes, it has. I think that, you know, council needs to feel comfortable with what they're proposing to do for phase one. I want to be very clear that, you know, I'm not sold on phase two and phase three happening. You know, I want to know what happens in phase one, but I do believe that they are the right entity to do phase one for us, given all of the other things that we have going on. I have not spoken with Chris about the cost, and that's because I wanted to speak with council first. I didn't want to go and ask him to, try to figure out whether we could use forfeiture funds or, other dollars that we might have had laid aside, for the police building that we decided not to do, so there's dollars that we have available that could possibly be that we had set aside for something else. So I didn't do that yet because I wanted to, see where council was at first.
Madam President, just a couple more points as I'm getting in from the police accountability, just for the record, Madam Mayor. If we so choose, if council so chooses to move in this direction, the Police Accountability Board would like to be able to attend debriefing meetings with Wilmer Hill, as well as they would want to ask respectfully if Wilmer Hill to work with their new executive director that they're currently, as Councilman Lupien said, that they're very close to putting in place. And they also would want to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And they also would want to make sure that, citizens' voices are heard as well. So I would just want, if we chose to move in this direction, I would like to explore the idea of the framework of how this is going to look as far as working with the Police Accountability Board, as also with council, as was stated. I think there's a few things that would have to be worked out after we get comfortable with the existing proposal. The next phase, if we so choose to go to that phase of doing this, would be, what does it look like for them working alongside police accountability? What does it look like for them working alongside city council? Whether that's the public safety committee and or with Linda Kingsley, all of those things should be ironed out prior, if we so choose to move in this direction, and be laid out in writing and clear, so that we all have a clear direction and understanding of moving forward and how the relationships will be.
So I think that the report back, once they're retained, the report back would be to whomever we decided. Right now we have the public, and I think that the reason why it's very important to do this at this point in time is because the public is being engaged, not with just the PAB, but also with the Race Commission. The Race Commission is hearing testimony. And so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We have people that are already coming and talking and being engaged in that. And so you would want them to be able to sit in on those meetings, be able to hear those meetings, be able to hear that testimony. So, we're not exhausting the same people over and over again to tell their story. So I think that that's one thing that I would point out. As it pertains to who's at the table and the executive director of the PAB reports directly to council. It's an entity of city council. So if city council wants them at the table, wants them to be reporting back to the executive director, or wants the executive director at the table, the administration doesn't have a problem with that. I think that we would, clearly they will want to define scope. They'll want to be able to go in and do their work alongside and in consideration with these other entities that are already out here taking testimony and doing that type of engagement, instead of reinventing the wheel around that. And they can spend most of their time on really going through the intricate details and doing the interviews and everything that they need to do in order to bring back a report that in phase one that we can utilize as part of the Race Commission report, as well as gives the PAB the information that they need for policies and procedures that they may recommend that we change.
Are there any further questions or comments on this item?
Yes, Councilman Peel here.
Okay, Councilmember Peel, then Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you. I believe that we have a pretty smart group of people out there in the city. And I know, Mayor, you said it before, that the attorneys will be working for the people. There's a lot of them that are speaking about, defunding police and systemic racism and policies and procedures. Have we thought about maybe putting them to work to look into these things, to come up with a plan, to come to us and say, this is what we're talking about. This is where we can change the police department. These are findings that we have found in our investigation ourselves. That way we don't need to pay for attorneys to look into it. We can actually get it straight from the community that is speaking about this same issue for free.
So I think that we are already engaging with the people in the community around this issue for free. The race commissioners are not paid. The people that are testifying before them are not paid. The PAB board is not paid. And the testimonies that are being collected, you also have other folks that are out there that's doing their own, investigative reporting. I think that the difference in here is you have people that know what a police department is supposed to look like, know how procedures and policies are supposed to be, outlined and presented and given to the citizens as well as to the officers. And you have people with the expertise that have done that before and helped other police departments recover. I think that that's different than what has been proposed thus far, with just having people look at it. I definitely believe that we are in a point in time in our community where we definitely want to engage as many citizens as possible around this issue, and that's what these other organizations are doing. But we also want to make sure that we are being comprehensive in how we are reimagining our police department. And so we're not reforming, we are actually changing and reimagining it through a different set of lens that encompasses all of the voices that you talked about through a process and an entity that has the expertise in bringing this to a fruition in a way that we can, as a municipality, continue to do the work that we need to do. And let me just be very clear on what I mean. I mean, we still have to respond and should be responding and are responding to different issues that are happening in our community. We have this year 36 murders. And that's, we had a mass shooting where 2 people lost their life and 15 other people were shot. We have other work that we need to do and continue to serve the citizens of Rochester. And we need to do it in a way that is encompassing of the feelings of the entire community in that. And so I think that we definitely need to engage an entity that can look at everything holistically and provide us with a plan on how we can continue to do the work that we need to do on behalf of the citizens, but do it in such a way that it understands that change is on the horizon and it helps us get to where we all want to be, which is a better community that polices our community differently.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Patterson.
Well, I was just going to say, in general, I do agree with the mayor. The outside eyes coming in to look at our police department, I think, has a great deal of value. I don't doubt RIT's expertise in being able to do this, but it's one thing to have to figure it out. It's another thing to have had the experience doing it with other police departments across the country. So I think there's a great deal of value in that. Again, the challenge is the price, but I do think that they would give us quality work, and I think that's important.
Okay.
Councilmember Melendez put a question. He said he had a question in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So for me, it's probably more a statement than a question. Given the short timeline, I just would be concerned about how we set the table for community engagement. I know in the proposal, what was stated is that they would spend some energy working with key community stakeholders. And I think that we have to be very cautious about how limited that could be in a short time period. And I would advocate that we spend some time thinking about how we set those community input tables, making sure that it's diverse. It's not it's beyond just the PAB and the Race Commission as well, that there's other stakeholders out there that really want to have a say in this. So I'm hoping that if we were to move forward with at least phase one, that is a significant part of the early energy that gets invested into this.
Well, yes, I think that you have to have many different unique perspectives and voices. But I do think that the PAB and the Race Commission are reaching out to those other voices in the community. And so that's why I think that if we're going to engage with WilmerHale, getting them on board in this early part as the engagement is happening, and anyone that is not at the table or that needs to have that, needs to have a seat or have a discussion with the consultants would be able to do so. And I think that that would lead from, City Council. Generally what happens is we provide them with the list. These are the people that we want you to talk to. These are the organizations, or we set up, meetings through our, community boards and commissions, and also our block clubs and our neighborhood associations and things like that. Again, I think that we don't want to overwhelm people. And that's why it's good to have a sort of coordinated effort and information intake that would be available to everyone to be at the table to look at this, rather it's through Race, PAB, or through some other entity, but that list would definitely come from us on who we would want them to sit down and talk to. I mean, because they wouldn't know, we would have to provide that to them.
Hopefully council will be able to provide that list as well. Would have input on that.
Yeah, you say that they would get that from us, is that us is us. And anyone else that, that the citizens think that we need to engage in. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
With Vice President Lightfoot, would you get back to me on how you would like to proceed? And then once I hear back from you, on behalf of council, I will talk to our budget director and see if the dollars that we had expended from or saved from other projects could be utilized for this. All right, thank you.
I love though that you mentioned the forfeiture funds. I'd love to be able to spend it on that. It's so limited in terms of what we can spend that on.
Federal dollars, there's parameters and things like that, but I think that that would be a space that we would definitely look to first.
Check that out. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right. So we'll get to our agenda, and we're talking about money, and guess what? Our first committee is finance.
Yeah, and that's what I was mainly going to touch on today. I mean, there's not much in terms of legislation. You guys saw that. But what was sent to council I think earlier today was Chris Wagner put together a discussion of the current financial picture for 1920. Some of that stuff is preliminary. And I mean, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or be negative, but I think that I would urge all council members to really read that in depth, because we do have, we're going to have a lot of challenges. We had challenges at the end of 1920, as you know, because the state held back aid that is due to us. Our hope is that we still may get that around $19 million that they held back, but we don't know. I believe it was not 19 million, 17.6 million, which was deferred. So that was in 1920. Sales tax revenue for the first quarter was okay, but we don't know what it's going to be in the second quarter. And I always tell people the city budget is basically a three-legged stool: state aid, sales tax, and property tax. Property tax is really the only thing we kind of have a little bit of control over. That's assuming people have the ability to pay their property taxes. So we got some tough times going ahead. The parking fund is also a challenge that we'll have to figure out how we're going to handle it, because obviously people haven't been parking and getting tickets the way they usually do because of COVID. And then, we probably will have a general fund gap of about $57 million that we'll have to close if you look at the past budget. And that's not counting pension costs that may be higher than before and going into 2021. So with all that, what I'm saying is that we have a very tough financial situation, and I think that we're going to have to look to see how we can squeeze every dollar. We all have things that we need to do, and the needs aren't getting less, but the needs aren't getting any less, but the dollars that are there are. I mean, I think the one hope that we do have is that the federal government can get off their cans and pass a phase 3 census. I mean, phase 3 coronavirus relief package with 8 municipalities that will help. So I'm hoping that will happen. In terms of legislation, again, there's not much not much in terms of legislation, but the big thing I wanted to touch on just doing this report was this. And then the last thing I'll say, I don't know if anyone heard, just to give you an example of how scary the economy is right now. And as long as I can remember, I don't ever remember the Hyatt Hotel closing down for the winter. So because of what's happening, I don't know if you guys heard this today, the Hyatt is announcing that it's closing and it probably won't start operating again until 2021. So, you know, hotel motel tax, we get that from the county. So, I mean, I think that we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. I know the police stuff is important. You know, housing is important. All this stuff is important. But if we don't spend a lot of time thinking about the finances, it's not fun stuff. It's not, you know, it's not interesting to a lot of people. I used to say this when I was at the school district. It can create problems down the line. So I think it's important for us to just keep that in mind as we go forward during this year. We are now into month 4 of our fiscal year. You know, it started July 1st. So hopefully things will get better. But I think we have to hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Thank you. Councilmember Lupien, then Councilmember Peel.
In terms of our financial situation and, you know, money coming in, I understand that that's stress, but do you have any, I don't know how to phrase this question, but basically, you know, the police response has been about $2 million just in the last couple of months, and a bulk of that in the last couple of weeks. And, you know, I don't know what the directive is going forward, you know, because I'm still seeing a lot of mobilization, even though there's not a lot of action, and wondering what impact that's having on the budget.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have my monthly meeting with the budget director, and I can ask that question and see where they are with the overall budget. You know, I mean, the good thing, it's not a good thing, but you know, we didn't have really any special events, which, you know, the police usually cover. So we'll see. I'll ask that question to see what the current impact is on this current year's budget as it relates to the police, where they are compared to last year, and how it stands right now and how it's affecting the budget. That's a good question. I can definitely ask that. That wasn't a part of this most recent update, but I can definitely ask that.
Yeah, because they do get reimbursed for those special events. So I don't know if we're saving any money there, but
yeah. So I can ask that. I'll take that as a question to ask, and I'll report back.
Councilmember Peel.
Yes, thank you, President Scott. Malik, can you speak on, for those of you watching on YouTube, can you speak about the census and how not participating in it might directly impact our finances as well?
Oh God, I mean, not. I mean, it affects us in a way that's major. I mean, and you know, Rochester, like many cities, we're undercounted because a lot of our people are in the shadows and they're not counted. I mean, somebody who might know, Miguel might know the actual dollar amount per person.
26,000.
How much?
26,000.
So yeah, so there you go, $26,000 per person if a person is not counted. You know, and I think, you know, we're running not anywhere near where we want to be in terms of census count, and that's just across the country. That's just across the country in urban centers. So I mean, that is so important because remember, we send New York State sends more money to the federal government than we get back. So you know, we have that basically by people not filling out their census and not being counted, we are losing out on revenue to help our folks. So it has a major impact.
Can I pop in for one quick question, Loretta?
Councilmember Lightfoot, followed by Councilmember Gruber.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Chairman Malik, I would just ask the question, not to put you on the spot, but maybe to get you to think about this as we move forward, or you may have already, to say that, we need to begin to think about this stuff, or we need to begin to look at this, the finances. What are the recommendations as far as an action plan, as opposed to just getting out of theory and conversation and going into, is it work sessions? Is it specific meetings just geared towards finances? But what are we doing proactively on finances outside of just our chairs meeting? Since it's that critical and it's that dire, shouldn't we be doing something about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your question, we need to have more. We can have some more work sessions with the budget director, I think, around that. But I will say that budget has already taken some very, very good initial steps. I didn't touch on them, and let me touch on them. I mean, locking down all discretionary income, cutting back on travel. I mean, a lot of that stuff has been done, and I think that needs to continue. I mean, even with the parking plan, we've done some stuff with the parking, like in terms of pulling back on some of the costs that are related to security that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. But some of the stuff you can't get blood from a stone. Some of the stuff is going to have to come from the state and the federal government, though. So I think there's an advocacy conversation that we're also going to need to have going forward. But Mr. Vice President, you are 120% right. I think that almost, I would say, even on a monthly basis, we're going to have to get updates on where we are, what we're doing, and then how the numbers change. I think this report that you guys got was a good first step as well, because it's showing where we are, and then it's talking about the options that we have. One of the options is deficit financing. That's something that we need to think about. So I think that it has to be an ongoing conversation, and we have to. This conversation that we had about WilmerHale, I mean, this was 2 years ago. The conversation may not have been extensive because the dollars may not have seemed so big. But now, because of Corona, I think the type of conversation we have with WilmerHale, we're going to have with other things. I think that we're going to have to be able to do that going forward.
One of the other ongoing efforts is, you could call it a personnel freeze, but it's more like a slush, because positions do get filled, but each one gets examined closely as to whether, even though it's budgeted, it's approved, they're not automatically filled. Somebody looks at it very closely and says, okay, yeah, we budgeted this, but do we really, really need it? So that's an ongoing effort too. That's a significant impact. Councilmember Gruber, followed by Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, just very quickly, I had not heard that news about the Hyatt. Chairman Evans, thanks for sharing it. I'm wondering, it feels like we budgeted, like there was some fairly aggressive budgeting when it comes to the convention center and Blue Cross, considering the fact that events were largely canceled for the first chunk of the year. Is there any reconsideration about the budgeted plans for those two facilities?
I think that's a good question that we're going to have conversations on. I mean, the convention center still has to operate. I think the question with the convention and Blue Cross is I think less of a problem. The convention center, I think, is the bigger challenge in terms of subsidy and what that subsidy may need to be. The financials on the convention center were excellent in February. They were running ahead of plan, and they were going to have the best year they ever had. So I think the question that we're going to have is, how are we going to subsidize them and ensure that making sure that they still will be able to come out on the other side when things start to open back up. We basically, they are tied to us and we are tied to them. So, we can't let them go under. So we'll have to have conversations about their overall financial plans. And I know Chris was going to touch base with the convention center last week. At the end of last week, I think he said he was. So tomorrow, when I check in with him, I will also update council on that as well. In addition to Councilmember Lupien's question, I will also get feedback on that subsidy and the budgeting around the convention center.
I think typically what would happen with the convention center was that we kind of deficit funded, but even equally important, their balance, they were able to keep their excess income balance, and that went toward their capital expenses and stuff like that. So we didn't have to do it. We would have if they didn't have it. So they won't have money going toward their capital expenses. And I think that's where we're gonna get called on, if whether the heating system or roof or whatever goes out, the money that they would have been accumulating to take care of that won't be there. So that is going to be an issue. We are very fortunate with the War Memorial. The agreement that we have currently relieves us of the liability of having to carry that. This was, it was a good move. It was a good move. The timing couldn't have been better. So, okay, we had, next was Councilmember Harris. Did you go? Councilmember Harris?
Yes, Malik, thank you, President Scott. Malik, can you please go into a little bit more details, especially for our YouTube viewers, a little bit about the deficit financing. Could you explain what would that look like, or what could that look like?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that we won't have to go there, but we have to be prepared for it in the event that they hold back on state aid. But it's a way for us to preserve our cash. It's a law that New York State has. We would have to pass special legislation, and New York State would have to pass special legislation to allow the city to issue bonds to cover an operating deficit if we get to that point. And the amortization period over the bonds would be 10 years. The amount of the deficit would need to be certified by the New York State Comptroller's Office, and then the city will be subject to additional oversight from the state for the duration of the amortization period of the bonds, including the filing of quarterly reports and all that stuff. But that's just, those are just conversations of arrows that we want to have in our quiver in the amount. So this gets to almost to what Vice President Lightfoot asked about. These are just the type of things that we got to start thinking about in the event that we have to pull those out. The hope is that we won't, but like I said, we should hope for the best, but prepare for any eventualities. Because the key is we also want to make sure to be able to preserve our cash, because if you have a major event that comes due, you don't want to be, it's just like your own personal finances. You don't want to have no cash on hand. And we also don't want to end up with the school district in terms of having no fund balance. So we have to make sure that we keep that at a healthy level as well.
So to be clear, the deficit finance would be like your last final resort, the final stop.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Lupien?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Earlier we were talking about, a slush on positions, maybe, really reevaluating if we need to fill them. But just wondering on new positions, just being new, kind of don't understand. Can a new position be added outside of the budget if it wasn't budgeted for? And if so, is that something we might also look at slowing down?
I think all of the personnel transactions are subjected to the same scrutiny.
Okay.
So whether it's adding one that wasn't included in the budget, where there's now a critical need for, or filling one that was, it's still going to be looked at very closely before the action is taken.
And the other thing,
go ahead, Councilmember Evans.
No, and I was going to say the biggest threat for us too. You think about strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. We have a very strong budget department. Mm-hmm. I mean, our finances are still strong, so I don't want to give that message. But our biggest threat to us guys is state aid. I mean, our state aid. I mean, if we don't get that 88.2 million or whatever it is that we're supposed to get next year, we're going to be having a different conversation, and it's not going to be a fun one. And we're going to have to explain to the public what's going on, because, like I said, it's that three-legged stool. So, I mean, I don't want to think about that. But going back to what Vice President Lightfoot said, what can we do? We got to have that, and I think it's okay to sound the alarm. We're not being Chicken Little. This is not like an academic exercise. This is real, and it can get real, much more real in the next couple of months. And by the way, coronavirus cases have gone up, so who knows what the heck we're going to be doing in 3 months. So I don't I don't want to sound alarmist, but sorry, Madam President.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Pio.
Yes, Councilman Malik, just to add to that, I know that, being in finance, we always take a look at past debts and what the current rates look like. Have we thought about just jumping ahead of all this? Because let's anticipate that it gets worse. Jumping ahead of it and maybe look at that deficit financing, pulling some money now while rates are low and refinancing any past debts just right now as we're speaking. That way we're ahead of it, and that way we have some little bit of wiggle room for the future.
I don't know if we have, but I can bring that up to Chris. But I will remind you guys, the one thing you approved a couple of months ago with budget, around budget time, was that RAN, which gives us the ability for us to issue our own RAN. That's the other quiver that we have in our pocket too that I didn't mention. So that could also be very useful to us if we get into a cash crunch, to be able to issue the revenue anticipation notes. Similar to what we do for the school district, we can do that for ourselves, and that might satisfy what you just said, Councilmember Pio. So we have that in our quiver as well, which could also help us. And that also goes back to the other point of, what can we do? That's another thing we can also do. Hopefully we won't need to, but we have that in our quiver.
The downside of borrowing the money is that it impacts our credit standing. So if we've got to do it, we got to do it. But if we don't have to do it, we wouldn't want to until we absolutely have to do it, because we've already lost an A because of the school district mess. Right. That would probably bring us down another one, which would make our expense higher in the long run. But that's consideration. Councilmember Patterson.
Just a comment. So one of the things that we often hear from the public is, how come you can't borrow money for operating expenses? And we routinely say to them, you can't borrow money for operating expenses because we're not allowed to. And yet we're discussing the potential possibility of borrowing money for operating expenses. So to the folks listening there, this is the last thing that we would ever want to do. And when I say the last thing, I mean dragging, kicking, and screaming, no thank you, don't want it. So don't expect us to do this. If we're doing this, it's a lot worse than you think it is. So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and to your point, Councilmember Patterson, it requires legislation from the state. So we just can't do it. We would have to get approval from the state. You know how that goes sometimes. So so it's not even something that we can just do on our own. We would have to go ask for it from the state. So yeah, it's just not that easy.
And the expectation would be that we would all advocate for the state to borrow from the federal government before we borrow anything, especially around operating expenses.
Right.
Folks, we don't borrow money for operating expenses. We're not allowed to do it. We don't do it. It's bad practice. It is frowned upon, and we should never do it. But in a crisis, we might have to consider it.
Okay, we're gonna have to move along. Councilmember Patterson, NBD legislation this month. Activity. What's going on?
Not a whole lot going on this month in NBD. We've got some appointments to boards. I just want to give a hats off to the folks in NBD in particular, and also Joanne Reeves in the mayor's office, who's done great work in finding folks to fill those boards and commissions. They've done great work there. You all have the notes from the meeting. So, if you want to talk about it offline, I'm more than happy to. Again, nothing big, nothing special going on in NBD this month.
Thank you. Councilmember Gruber, PPW.
Yes, nothing particularly big out of PPW size-wise, except for the work on Pont de Rennes, which is very exciting. It's a Riverway project that is moving forward. It's there's a lot of, and that Rocky Riverway is going to keep moving forward. Just all the other stuff going on right now.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure whether you were breaking up or you were speaking. All right, so you're all set.
I'm sorry, I'm having some connection issues, as you can tell, but I'm happy to answer any questions about PPW as they come along.
Okay, all right, thank you. Council Member Vice President Lightfoot.
Yes, Madam President, nothing particularly sexy or ugly in public safety this particular month. Have a bit of a break this month, gratefully, but I'm willing to answer any questions. However, I would strike people's attention to the renaming of DRYS, I think, which actually is kind of sexy in its own, being that normally, typically, the city of Rochester does not provide necessarily human services. And as one who was formerly on the Human Service and Public Safety Committee in the county, I'm excited about being actually grafted into public safety and human services after we make this minor change to the naming of DRYS. So I just want to say that that to me is the most important thing we have going on in public safety right now, and the direction that public safety is taking in our city of providing services. I know just this weekend, Councilmember Lupien contacted me a few times concerning a few issues, and we actually had someone for her to talk to and to refer these particular crisis and or services to them, which we have direct contact with individuals now. So that's something I don't necessarily say we had in the past that we currently have now, and I'll let you speak to that, Councilmember Lupien, if that was suffice or if those individuals were accessible and attentive to the crisis and or your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was kind of later on Saturday night, and I got an immediate call back, and so very, very responsive. That was Aaliyah, and she had a few recommendations for me, which were helpful. And you sent me over Pathways information, and they're connecting today, so definitely doing good work. I have another question. What will we call this committee in an acronym?
Madam President?
We'll work on it. Vice President Lightfoot, a question to relate to the chief. It's just one of interest for me. It's nothing pressing, but if you just let me know. With the police officers who are working as security in uniform.
Like Wegmans, for instance? Gotcha.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What is that arrangement? Is that something that was the union has, that's something that was bargained, or how does that work? I know that they're not on, I think. Or are they on our payroll and then the city's being reimbursed by Wegman?
That is an absolutely excellent question, Madam President. And the reason why I specifically spit out Wegmans, because I was just there yesterday and saw the police officer in uniform doing security. And I thought the very same thing. I go, is this guy on duty? Is he off duty but still wearing a uniform and getting paid overtime, or being paid privately? So I have the same question you have, and I've not had my monthly meeting. I will answer that question to the chief, and I will get back in writing to this council with the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We talked about WilmerHale. We're working on getting the retreat scheduled. I think we're going to put out some dates. I don't know if I'm sorry, Councilmember Patterson.
No, just to comment on that, I believe, please ask the question and find out. Normally, when we see an officer, at least I believe in the past, when we saw an officer in uniform somewhere, that was usually a special event assignment. So, but please ask, because normally that's what happens when they're there, and because they used to be at the Price Right and all other places. So,
and I'm pretty sure, you can double check, I'm pretty sure they can't do it however it is with an establishment where they're selling alcohol, like a bar. they can't do that kind of detail for a bar, but just sort of get the parameters of that. We are trying to schedule the retreat, and we're going to put out some dates for, we're looking at a 4-hour block in inside someplace that's got a lot of space.
Edgerton.
Yeah, that ballroom is one of the
It's a great space. It's got everything we need there.
Okay.
Just
So-
one. No,
Or Danforth.
absolutely.
So I think we've got a few choices, but I did want to, and we'll send you sort of the framework, and it will start with the comp plan. And there will be, I think, 2 sessions, one on the comp plan, and the next will be perhaps team building or something along those lines. But we'll start with the comp plan because, as Malik was saying, that's our North Star.
Right.
And we need to get kind of familiar with it so that we can better direct ourselves. And we're so focused on policing right now that I don't know that we're giving everything we should to those other things that will make our city great. So we'll get some dates to you and hope that we can get them far enough out that you can put those on your calendars and be sure to attend. And so for outside boards and commissions, there is a vacancy on the Board of Health. I will send out the description of the requirements, and I don't think they meet monthly, I can't remember, but I do have their mission and their meeting frequency and all of that. So I will send it out and ask if anybody's interested. If not, I will appoint.
It's second Wednesday of the month from 4 to 6.
Okay.
Madam
We've heard
President.
about,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we've heard about, in terms of boards and commissions, we've heard about the convention center. We heard from Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Gruber, you have anything for the library?
Yes, just that the library is in the process of scaling back up in terms of how many folks they can let in there at once and hours of operation, and probably most importantly, programming is starting back up, but not in a one size fits all approach. There's a lot of work with each branch, and one of the issues I think I raised last time, but that I want us all to be mindful of, is that there are some libraries that simply do not have the ventilation systems and the space in the branch libraries to be able to really ever open up in a kind of COVID world in the way that we want them to. And that might require some investment at some point, or it might require some bigger conversations. But those are all things that are happening at the board level.
How about ABC?
Yeah, sorry, couldn't find the mute button. Things at ABC are tough, like they are for all CBOs right now. And what's different about ABC is that because they are a community action program, there's a good chunk of kind of guaranteed mandated federal funding, but they are jostling over that right now to an extent too. And it's tough time for CBOs. I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know, but across the nation, there's an expectation that, somewhere between 15 and 30% of CBOs are going to be out of business in the next several years because of the COVID pandemic. I'm not trying to raise alarms about ABC. I think ABC will be, I think community action programs will be okay because of that federal funding, but it's a tough time for any CBO right now. I know ABC is feeling that pain too.
I have a request to go into executive session to discuss an issue regarding legal counsel. May I have a motion?
Second,
I
Madam
make a
President.
motion.
All in
Or
favor?
move. All right.
Any opposed? Okay. So we'll take just a moment to get off of our.
One moment, I missed the motion and the second. I need to record that.
It was moved by Madam President and second by Malik.
And then everybody was in favor, I believe. Was there anybody opposed?
No.
So it's approved 8-0. All right, I will take us off of our live stream.